Morning guys, here we are working on the CL Honda. We're going to fit some piston rings. We got two sets here and I need to look at these under a scope to make sure I can see where the markings for it are. Markings go up to the top of the cylinder. That looks like the compression ring and that's the oil ring. So these two here look identical. Not sure that they're supposed to be, but it looks like they are. Oil ring here. So first we'll go ahead and fit the oil ring. We have an 8 and a 6. It's supposed to be a 0.006. And I'm getting more of a 0.008 out of that one. A 10 is too tight. I'm putting it at about 0.008, which is a little bit above spec. The wear limit is to 0.031. Again, I just need to make sure my markings are straight, and they are. So I'm going to go ahead and fit this other one in that same side because I want to see if I can get a little tighter fit. Basically, I'm going down about 5 millimeters. So I'm going to start out with the 10 that we had on the other side. And that is actually slightly looser. So I'm going to stick with this ring for that side. We have a left and a right piston. Slightly different sizes. And the ring gap we're looking for is between 0.006, that's 0.006, to 0.031. So we're a little bit larger than the 0.006. We're at 0.008. So that means we have a run up to 0.031. So long way to go before we're at the maximum width there. And we're getting 8 there. So that's both the oil rings. So we want to do the second ring next. Again, same process. Just putting it in. All the ring gaps are the same. So again, I'm going to go with an 8. 8 feels pretty good. It's probably about an 8. 10's a little tight. And 6 is a little loose. So we're probably right between about an 8 and a 10, actually. About a 9. That's the top ring. That's the bottom ring. So get this one in here. That is good exposure all the way around. It looks even. So we were on a 9 on that one. That's a 10 and that is way too tight. That's an 8. That feels good. And that's a 6 and that's loose. And I would say this one's a little closer to a 8 than a 9. So I'm going to put that one aside and see what we get over here on the other side. So now we got the second ring in. I want this one for that side. It fit a little better on that side. I don't know if you guys are following what I'm saying. Maybe I'm not saying it right, but I know where it is. And the difference really for these two rings was probably between 8.5 and 9. Okay, now we got our final two upper rings here. So again, I need to make sure I got my markings facing up. And they are. Check this one as well. It is. All right, let's go ahead and get that one fitted in. And this should be a little easier because now we have the second compression ring to guide us, and I'm going to go right down on top of that. Okay, so I think we'll start out again with a 6, a little loose. 8 feels really good. Got a good drag on it, it's not binding. And a 10 is really binding, and I'm kind of having to push it in there. So this one is pretty close to a 9. 9, maybe a little bit closer to an 8. And we'll do the same thing with this. 6, loose. 8, that's a little looser. 10, this one's probably closer to a 10, and that's an 8. So let's switch them. Alright, that's that one. And that's that one. Alright, so let's try them out again here. Did not intend to put the 6 away. 6. 6. 8. A little looser there. A little looser there. Let's go with the 10. Fairly good drag there. A little bit more than I'd normally set it at. And that's about the same. So now it's interesting, this one's probably a little bit looser cylinder, the right side. And that, I'm sure, has to do with the piston size. I know the guy that set it up said one was slightly bigger than the other. Just double checking I got my markings right. I know I had them oriented the whole time, so it shouldn't have changed. And I see my markings facing up. So that's the piston rings. Now the next thing we need to do is, there's a little arrow on the pistons. These are 0.75 pistons. There's a little arrow pointing forward, so the pistons will actually go in this direction. Go, and there we go. So what we're going to do is we're going to clock the rings. So the rings should be at basically 120 degrees off from each other. If you had them all straight lined up, it would just blow by. That is the next step. I'll just highlight what I'm talking about. There should roughly be a piston ring right here, a piston ring right here, and a piston ring right here. So compression second ring and oil ring. So that's what I'm going to line it up to. And there we are. We're ready to drop them in. Not going to do that quite yet. Got a few other things to do. I got some parts in the cleaning solution there. So that's basically fitting the rings. Now, if they were too tight, I would go ahead and file them. But because they're between 6 and 10, actually they're between 8 and 10, there's no need to file any of the rings. They're actually a really good fit. These are 0.75 over pistons, the rings to match. And so we really didn't have to do anything other than fit them and make sure that they were correct. And if it was too tight, if it was like say a 0.4, I would just slightly brush it with, well, you normally use a ring file, and I do have a ring file, but you could also do something like, like a Dremel grinding stone is a good way to do it as well. You could just pinch the rings between the stone and just drag it a couple times, and you don't have to do it very much, because if you do, it's easy to get a huge gap in rings. Okay, now we're going to go ahead and put in the cam chain tensioner. Just a drop of Loctite on each. Get that set up. The first one, the second one here, as soon as I find the lock washer. Alright, that's that. 3-inch extension on it here. lock this in place. Let me run this through. There we go. So that's the pathway for it. When it goes up, it tensions this way. This one basically is straight. There's a groove in the pin that's holding the tensioner in place. It goes up. It's just an oil passage to lubricate the roller. And then there's an oil hole basically in the bottom of this, which we lined up. If you saw the earlier video, we lined up the oil hole and the pin when we pressed it in, and that provides oil to that. I'm going to get those two run down, and then we go ahead and torque them. Look up your guide for your bolt sizes for torquing. Wet and dry. If you lubricate it, it's less. And I'm just approaching it 3 steps. And this is the final one. Again, I got Loctite on it just as an added insurance. I think the next thing we're going to do is go ahead and run in, although I still need to do the final cleanup on the studs. We also need to put the little guides in as well, and gasket, and then pistons on the rods. And then we could fit the cylinder. So, bring you back in a bit. Alright you guys, we got the last 2 studs to put in on the cylinder here. So, I didn't have you here for all of them. I just figure you don't want to sit here and look at that. It takes a long time to do this. I'm just going to run through a couple here. I'll probably shorten it to 1. But anyway, just wanted you guys to see the process. All the threads have been chased here. Basically, I'm doing the lock nut method. So, you know, putting on one of the old head studs and then another bolt that basically has the same thread. And you tighten them together. And so once they're locked in, studs are only a few pounds. Usually, you know, 3 to 8 pounds depending on the motor. So just run it on down. Just making it seat, you know, really tightly there. Make sure it goes all the way down because they can stop early if the threads are bound up. And then what you want to do is loosen the bottom nut first in the direction of torque. If you do the top one, it could back it out and loosen it. So always do the bottom one first, so if it does anything, it's going to go a little over instead of a little under. And as you can see, I got napkins or paper towels out onto the top of the motor here. So in case I drop one of these nuts while I'm putting it on, it doesn't fall into the motor. Which is not a big deal on a small motor like this, because literally all you have to do is turn it upside down and shake out the nut. So again, pretty easy to do, but you know, I just don't want to have to fight that. And it doesn't take a lot of torque between the 2 bolts. You kind of get a feel, but it's probably about 3 times what you're going to actually torque the stud to. Alright, now that we got that done, I did have to chase out this one here and this one here. Both of them were just not quite right. So I ended up having to chase both of those. Well, as you can see, we're trying to fit the piston in here. Just hoping I don't spit this ring all over the garage. or clip that is. That's it. Just need to get in there and see if it's seated all the way. Sure enough, it looks like it is. So now we'll move around to side number 2. And do the same thing. Alright, finding that sweet spot can be a little fun, but slid right in, so no problem. Just got one more clip to attach. Just trying to protect it so the clip doesn't fall in if it decides it wants to try. I just need to get in there and make sure I got it in all the way. And that looks good. All right.